Page 1. The Boy's Vow. The man who would become known as the first Wizard King stood alone atop a three-leaf clover symbol overlooking the kingdom he held so dear. The entire city was alight with flames originating from the four-armed beast that towered above. The creature was three-eyed, accompanied by long silver hair and curved horns. His sheer aura created a horseshoe of magical energy which bubbled threateningly behind him. Upon his chest was a mark like a many-pronged anchor, imposing itself like a scar running the length of his torso. A thick serpent-like tail protruded from its back. The Wizard King, for his part, donned a simple white and gold tunic along with his bright red cloak. His golden blonde hair seemed to glow against the fires of his enemy. A golden book lay gripped in his right hand. The demon growled at the man that stood opposed to him. Each of its four palms wielded different elements: water, fire, ice, and lightning. It hurled volleys of magic at the Wizard King, who seemingly blinked them away with flashes of his own light magic. No other man could put forth the power needed to face a threat of such magnitude. Through this lone act of courage, his story became a legend, although he was far from lost to time. Long ago, humanity came close to being decimated by demons, but just one mage faced them in battle and saved mankind. He was known thereafter as the Wizard King, and he became a legend. Resting in the plains beneath the mountain that peaked the capital city is Haj Village. The villagers plowed their fields with the help of their own innate magical power, using the radiant energy to levitate their tools to plow their fields. They gazed away from their work towards the mountain looming next to them and saw the royal capital glowing excitedly at the top. The beckoning cheers could be heard hundreds of miles away. A villager holding a bowl of water stopped his work to admire the city from afar. "The royal capital is quite rowdy today. So much magic to celebrate. The Wizard King made a triumphant return," he said with a smile. The other villager with a rake mirrored the gesture. "Ah, the Wizard King, eh? This kingdom exists." He turned in the opposite direction of the city and eyed a statue of the first Wizard King. "Thanks to the generations of Wizard Kings who have protected us." The villager rested both hands atop his rake as he admired the statue. The Wizard King's monument rested atop a giant skull, so massive that even one of its three eyes was several-fold the idol's size. The decaying bone was layered with plant life. The skull bridged gaps between mountain peaks.
"One day, I'll become the Wizard King and make you happy!"
screamed a boy to the left of the villagers. "What the? It's that lad from the church again," remarked the farmer. Then the screaming continued.
"That's why! Please marry me!"
The lad shouted his proposal to the world, but, for more times than he could count, received a negative reply from the woman he pursued, Sister Lily. "I'm sorry, Asta. I'm a nun, so—" To which Asta, promptly and dramatically, fell flat on his back in defeat. His white hair waved along with his dark blue overshirt as he jolted himself back up from the ground. White, side-spiked hair peeked out from his dark headband. A red star symbol dawned on the left side of the band. He didn't even hesitate to continue his belligerence. "I'm not done yet!" I'm sorry, but—"
"I'm not giving up!"
"I'm really sorry, Asta."
"Let me ask again!"
"Like I said," mumbled the sister warningly as she reached for her grimoire.
"Stop pestering me!"
She screamed with a volume that matched Asta's. Sister Lily conjured up an attack to dissuade Asta further. Water creation magic. Holy Fist of Love! Falling from the sky, a fist of magical water, emblazoned with the cross of the church, crushed Asta into the ground. Immediately, Sister Lily feared she had gone too far and actually hurt the boy whom she held so dearly. "I'm sorry, Asta," she cried. "I used grimoire magic without thinking." With seemingly infinite stamina, Asta was once again on his feet screaming.
"Not yet!"
He rasped as water trickled from his frame. Another attack hit him. This time, he appeared to simply be picked up and carried off by a gust of wind. The trails of the green wind followed to a dark-haired boy named Yuno, who held out his hand with a finger gun. A black sweater stuck tightly to his thin frame, propping up a beautiful blue stone necklace at the center of his chest. By his side were 4 children of various ages. "Are you causing trouble for the sister again, Asta?" accused Rekka, a younger girl with frizzy dark hair. "How many rejections will it take for you to get a hint?" questioned Nash, who was particularly tired of Asta's antics. Nash's short brown hair waved from the aftermath of his orphan brother's spell. His purple eyes reflected the bright sun above. Ignoring the younger ones, Asta took to Yuno with his continued hollering.
"Yuno! Why are you getting in the way? Why?"
Asta pointed his fingers at him. Calmly, the boy answered him. "You're noisy, short, restless, and immature." Then Yuno continued. "Basically, you have no qualities that would appeal to women." With each of these insults, Asta appeared to take physical hits of disbelief. Enraged, Asta began berating Yuno.
"Hey! How could you say that to someone you grew up with for the last 15 years? You cold and handsome jerk!"
But his cries fell on deaf ears. Yuno had moved past Asta and now offered Sister Lily assistance with the laundry she was tending to. After the shouting continued, Yuno relented and engaged with Asta once more. "By the way, Asta, the sister is a person of the cloth and cannot get married. And also, you can't marry anyone because you're only 15. These words cut Asta to his core, so he resorted to what he wanted more than anything, a rematch with Yuno.
"I challenge you to a fight, Yuno!"
he cried. "No," he replied flatly.
"Why not?"
whined Asta. "It's a waste of time."
"What did you say to me?"
Asta shouted indignantly. Finally, Nash interjected. "Don't, Asta. There's no way you can win against Yuno, because you can't use magic." As Nash reminded his fellow orphan of this fact, Asta had launched into a flashy extension of his right hand, as if casting some complex attack magic. As always, nothing happened, which enraged Asta once more.
"Nothing came out!"
"I can't believe you can't use magic at your age," chided Nash.
"I'm not done yet!"
A saying the villagers of Haj were quite used to at this point. "Hee, you're so funny, Asta," remarked Aruru, one of the youngest orphans. The ever-pessimistic Nash decided to continue demeaning Asta. "You have no magic skills whatsoever."
"That's not how you talk to your elders!"
Asta protested. "Whatever," disregarded Nash. "In this world, magic is everything."
"You're such a brat! You give me no choice! I'll show you what I'm truly capable of!"
As Asta made this declaration, he launched himself onto his back for a third time this morning. He began doing crunches at a terrifying pace, all the while screaming his head off. The young boy's torso moved so fast that it created afterimages.
"See this? I bet none of you can do sit-ups at this speed!"
Asta challenged. "So? What's the big deal, idiot?" retorted Nash. "So funny, Asta," again remarked the youngest of their little family. As if ending the argument, Yuno began a display of powerful and delicate wind magic, instantly drying the laundry Sister Lily had been preparing to hang. Cries of appreciation and admiration chorused through the church group. Looking to capitalize on the idea of assisting the sister with chores, Asta took up the axe for chopping wood. Strength was his sole avenue for attaining similar praise, and he intended to show his love and the other orphans that he could pull his weight, with or without magic. As Asta was set to strike the placed log, it suddenly flew apart in 4 equal sections. Yuno had sliced it with precision, bringing his hand down in a karate chop-like fashion. He again proved himself more useful than the shorter, stockier boy. "I still can't believe you two are the same age," remarked Nash. In quick reflection, Asta reminisces about their lives growing up at the church. They had both been abandoned at this church on the same day. They had always been together, shared so many moments with each other. In his mind, they should be equal in every regard.
"So why had this great of a gap formed between us?"
"Talent and diligent effort," retorted Yuno, who had in fact worked to hone his magical prowess. Just then, Father Orsi appeared. "Yuno is the hope of this church," he exclaimed, praising the boy he had helped raise. Father Orsi was grinning, and nearly as overenthusiastic as the boy he had just ignored, Asta. "Yuno, you're really amazing," exclaimed Aruru. "I'm sure it's just a far-fetched dream to see you join the Magic Knights and work directly under the first Wizard King," Nash presumed, crestfallen at this entire interaction. Asta had resorted to sobbing on the ground. Sister Lily began comforting the boy, as she had always done. "Come on, Asta. You're going to have your awarding ceremony soon. It's coming in March. Once you have your grimoire, I'm sure it will trigger something in you, and you'll be able to use magic." The awarding ceremony took place once a year for any child that had reached the age of 15. Once they had obtained their grimoire, their magic potential would shoot through the roof in terms of power and complexity.
"I'm sure you're right, sister."
Asta was always quick to bounce back.
"I'll obtain the greatest grimoire, join the Magic Knights, and become the Wizard King,"
he declared, before whispering beneath his breath, "I'll finally renovate this ugly, shabby church." Unfortunately for him, the father heard him, for even Asta's whispers carried as if they had been shouted for all to hear. "How dare you call my church shabby?" shouted Father Orsi in outrage. Nash, however, had once again lost his patience with Asta. "There he goes again." He faced his back towards Asta and strutted away. "Only those of noble birth, like aristocrats and royalty, have the potential to become the Wizard King. We're peasants and orphans. There's no way one of us could become the Wizard King." Asta attempted to protest, but Nash continued. "And you can't even use simple magic yet. You have zero potential, and what's more, you don't even have prospects for a job. All the townspeople make fun of you. You know that, right?" At this, Asta ran off in his own anger, vowing that he would prove them all wrong. "Asta, where are you going?" called Sister Lily. "He'll be back by dinner time," reassured Yuno. Sister Lily had assisted in their upbringing ever since she relocated to this church in Hajj. Hence, she reflected on the past decade. She thought of Yuno and how he used to always cry when he was a young boy. And yet, he hasn't shed a tear since the day the two of them had returned from a journey, with Asta severely injured. He had been beaten savagely and was covered in bruises. Thankfully, her healing magic helped him recover quickly, but the sister knew that something had changed inside Yuno that day. Asta, too, came home covered in dirt every day since then. She could only wonder what he did every day to constantly come home like that. Asta liked to keep his training to himself. Physical strength training was looked upon as useless in this world where magic meant everything. Why would someone waste their time building up their muscles when all of their necessities were taken care of through magical means? To avoid these criticisms, Asta sought refuge in a place most townsfolk dared not venture, the base of the demon's skull that sat at the edge of the village. Here, drenched in sweat, with aching muscles, pursuing a fool's errand according to every person he had ever met, Asta completed another 1,000 handstand push-ups. Without fail, he always finished his workouts with Mogoro leaf juice. Asta had heard that it was a good supplement for increasing one's magical powers. Although, as he attempted another magic spell, nothing happened, Asta had his doubts about the Magora leaf juice. The memories of all the people who doubted his dreams motivated Asta to continue training no matter what.
I'm going to become the Wizard King, he said aloud. This is something I'll never give up on. So first, I need to train my body.
And he began another rigorous set of sit-ups. As the days grew on and the firefly dandelion fluffs took to the sky, the choosing ceremony was upon them. "Welcome, young men and women," boomed a voice. "You each will begin walking down a new path starting today. I wish you faith, hope, and love." A long silence bridged the chamber as the keeper of the grimoires descended unto them out of the air. The shelves in the wall stocked with magical books reached dozens of feet high. "I am the master of this grimoire tower," said Drought. The master was an ancient wizard with a comically cliché wizard's beard, accompanied by a wide, brim-pointed wizard's hat, wearing matching maroon robes. Drought carried with him a wizened appearance. He continued addressing the crowd of anxious 15-year-olds. "We haven't had a wizard king from this area, nor have we had one achieve greatness by joining the Magic Knights. I sincerely wish that someone among you will become the Wizard King." Unfortunately for Drought, his goodwill fell on mostly deaf ears, as the crowd stirred continuously with murmurs of anticipation. "Wow, I'm a full-fledged wizard starting today," said one. "Hey, look, those are the orphans from the church," exclaimed another. "Ugh, do they really have to give them a grimoire? They look so shabby, it feels like a waste of paper," one boy condescended.
I'm serious here,
The Tower Master shouted to recapture his audience. "Now, it is time for the awarding of grimoires." As he finished, dozens of magical books, all emblazoned with three-leaf clovers, whizzed through the air in search of their proper owner. More than any inclination of the individual wizard, each grimoire seemed to possess a will of their own, and choose the mage best suited to them. Glowing green, purple, red, orange, and nearly every other color filled the room and dimmed only once it had found the mage it was destined for.
Look how big my grimoire is,
One mage shouted. "Whatever, mine is thicker," replied his friend. Whether to leave Hodge or take over their family business, a wave of excitement spread over the entire crowd. Two haughty mages bragged about their plans to take the Magic Knight entrance exams in 6 months' time. Others began discussing the plans they had made for once they had their grimoire. As the high hopes of the room came slowly back down to earth, it was suddenly, painfully obvious that there was something wrong with a short, shabby-looking boy at the center of the room. Asta, arms still outstretched, searching for his grimoire, managed to croak.
My grimoire's not coming."
Slowly, every pair of eyes in the room found the awkward boy in disbelief, shock, and second-hand embarrassment apparent on their faces. Drought simply replied, "Try again next year,"
What? What the heck?
shouted the orphan in protest, his guardians, Father Orsi and Sister Lily, aghast in disbelief. The sister had especially been sure Asta's magic would finally reveal itself at this awarding ceremony. After all, it was unheard of for a 15-year-old not to receive a grimoire in the Clover Kingdom. All of Asta's fellow villagers mocked him with laughter. "I guess that's what you can expect from the slums. I didn't think he'd be this pathetic," said one of the mages planning on a run for the Magic Knights. Then suddenly, a bright gold light began emanating from one corner of the room, more radiant than any grimoire had glowed before, and yet somehow the light seemed soft and inviting. Simultaneously, 100 pairs of eyes moved from one orphan to the other, for it was Yuno that this shockingly bright grimoire had chosen. As their eyes adjusted, they realized the importance of this moment. The orphan prodigy was selected by the Four-Leaf Clover Grimoire.
The Four-Leaf Clover Grimoire, one breathed in disbelief. The one from legend? Another onlooker exclaimed. They say the first Wizard King had one.
It supposedly had great power.
That grimoire has good luck within it, explained one mage more familiar with their history. All eyes were on him, and he had fully realized what he now possessed. Yuno made a calm and determined proclamation. I'll become the Wizard King. His words echoed around the silent crowd as they all weighed the magnitude of this moment in their minds. They responded with thunderous applause. It drowned out everything else in the room as it gained traction. All that could be heard was the joyous approval of the townsfolk. Asta confronted the boy raised as his brother.
You know? Just you wait. I'll catch up to you soon. After all, I'm your rival.
Stunned at such a challenge from the boy who failed to be chosen by a three-leaf. Big talk from a guy who didn't even receive a grimoire, jeered one mage. You, his rival? Talk about clueless. Through these taunts, Asta remained defiant, determined not to be outdone by the boy he viewed as his equal. There's no way. Yuno replied simply and coldly, as he always did. Only at this did Asta's look of determination falter. Slowly, the crowd began to disperse. This took quite longer than traditional awarding ceremonies. After all, this was the most eventful ceremony the village of Haj had ever witnessed. As always, Sister Lily was concerned for Asta, not knowing how he would react to the confirmation that he really might never be able to use magic. Unbeknownst to the group, a shadowy figure lurked in the corner, eyeing Yuno
with a look of hunger.
I didn't think something so great would appear in this backwater town, the dark-haired man mumbled to himself. As was his custom, Asta sought solitude in a place out of prying eyes. He hung from a tree near the grimoire tower by his legs and contemplated the day. I knew I had no skill in magic, but I didn't know it was so bad I wouldn't get a grimoire, he complained aloud. I guess I can't do it. Did I disappoint Yuno? Nah, he probably doesn't even remember our promise. A brief memory of the two boys as children forming a vow by touching fists floated through Asta's mind. Then, as Asta was at his lowest point in years, he erupted in a renewal fit of loud enthusiasm.
Like I'm gonna give up, he shouted at the sky. Wah-ha-ha! Don't underrate me, Destiny. I'm going to do it, even if it takes a year or even 2. I'll work hard until I get a grimoire. Just you wait, Yuno.
He slowly calmed himself. Once again, Asta had finally dropped his eyes back toward the ground. He noticed Yuno, still in front of the grimoire tower. As Asta watched his rival, the mysterious man from before emerged from the shadows. The man of the day shouldn't be lingering so long, rasped the man.
As he finished his ominous threat, chains materialized and bound Yuno, knocking his newly acquired grimoire to the ground. Creation magic. Magic binding iron chain.
It restricts the magic and movements of those it captures, he explained to Yuno. Who the heck are you? Yuno demanded. Until recently, I was one of the magic knights, Revchi of chain magic. I was pretty famous, but now I'm just a wretched old thief. Only the chosen gets to use his grimoire, explained Revchi as he surveyed the four-leaf grimoire. But an underworld collector would pay insane money for a four-leaf clover grimoire. Even though you were chosen by the four-leaf, he continued, you're still a little chickadee who just received his grimoire. How unfortunate that I happen to be here.
Your legend will end before it could even begin.
The leaves in the tree rustled loudly, as if a coven of witches crashed their brooms into the timber. Asta came rolling in like a runaway boulder down the side of a mountain.
Hold it! What do you think you're doing, you thief?
Asta, Yuno called in concern.
Recognition slowly dawned upon Revchi as he remembered the boy from the awarding ceremony. You're that boy. That sad, pathetic lad who wasn't even awarded a grimoire. Defiantly, Asta squared his shoulders and continued.
A grimoire is a precious thing that belongs to its receiver. Give it back to Yuno, you jerk!
The outside world is a place where crooked deeds can be overlooked, but it looks like you'll be dead before you can see that world, lad, Revchi threatened. Run, Asta,
Yuno warned, but Asta had already began charging the chain mage.
I'm not going to run away from the disgraced jerk!
Asta yelled as he attempted to close the distance between himself and Yuno's captor.
Revchi, delighted at another subject to rage against, began to summon more chains for Asta. I may be reduced to being a thief, but I used to be a magic knight.
A mere boy like you is no match for me.
At this last word, 2 more chains flew through the air and wrapped themselves around Asta's torso. Asta struggled against the magic, and screamed the motto he had adopted for all these years.
I'm not done yet!
The boy's physical prowess was impressive. His agility allowed him to dodge the first 2 chains. No, said Revchi coldly. You're finished!
Dance of the pitless viper!
The ends of the chains struck Asta repeatedly from head to foot, while his torso remained constricted under the heavy chains. Asta, now bloody, bruised, and near the point of losing consciousness, did something he had never done. He doubted himself. Under the overwhelming pressure of the rogue magic knight, Asta realized that raw strength would not be enough. All his years of physical training had amounted to little against a fully trained mage. Revchi towered over Asta as he laid there trying to accept his defeat. With a cruel smile, he confessed to Asta about a secondary ability his chains provided him. You put up a decent struggle, lad. Since you worked so hard, I'll tell you something. These chains tell me the magical powers of those who touch them, and you have absolutely no magical powers within you. Yuno looked on in astonishment. No wonder you can't use magic at all.
You were probably just born that way.
Asta always knew he was an adept at using magic. In fact, he had never been able to use even the simplest of spells in any capacity. But the boy truly believed that he had the potential inside him. All he needed to do was unlock it somehow. Now, this fully trained magic knight was telling him that there was 0 chance he could ever wield magic. It crushed his soul. I never thought someone like you existed, Revchi expounded. When I think about what you've been through, and what you'll face in the future, I feel pity for you. I'm sure your friend, the great genius, makes fun of you as well. In his mind, Asta had to agree with Revchi. After all, Yuno was skilled enough to be chosen by the 4-leaf. He probably just saw Asta as another obstacle getting in his way. In this world, you won't be able to do anything. Nothing at all. You should give up on everything.
You were born to be a loser!
Revchi continued to hurl insults at Asta. Asta could think of nothing else except his uselessness in life up to that point. He couldn't save his friend from this thief. He couldn't even help with daily chores around the church. He thought to himself, I give.
Hey! Yuno's voice boomed across the courtyard. Who are you calling a loser? Asta is...
Memories flashed in Yuno's head as he tried to think of what exactly his friend was when it came to him. Long ago, when they were just boys, they had been sent to another town to deliver a message from Father Orsi. On this journey, they met a strange man who stole Yuno's necklace. It was that one thing that had been left with him on the doorstep of the church. It was a simple black band that held an ornate blue stone about the size of a riverbed stone. On this stone was a white cross in the center, and 4 small star-like shapes in each corner. It meant the world to Yuno, and now it seemed he would lose the one thing that could connect him to his parents. "That's mine," Yuno said unconfidently to the stranger. Tears of frustration had already begun to form in the corners of his eyes.
"Besides, this is too nice for a poor orphan to have," the man continued to himself. "In this world, magic is everything. Did you want to have a magic duel with me and die?"
He challenged. Then, in a blur of movement, Asta leaped forward, and although he was no bigger than Yuno, he launched himself onto the man.
"That belongs to Yuno! Give it back!" he yelled.
The man delivered a savage blow to the child Asta.
"Get off me, you punk! You dirty orphan!" "I'm not done yet!"
Bellowed Asta. The man took a step back in amazement. He was used to robbing full-grown men and women of their belongings without much resistance. Now here was this kid, who couldn't be any more than 10 years old, seemingly prepared to fight to the death over another boy's necklace. The man relented out of a confused fear of this boy.
"Fine, you can have it back,"
he conceded, then ran to safety from the youthful upstart. Concerned, Yuno went to his friend's side. Asta had collapsed onto the ground in exhaustion. "Thanks, Asta. Are you okay?" Asta ignored the question. "Magic is everything in this world, huh? Well, then I'll become someone."
"Even though I'm a poor orphan who can't use magic yet, I'll prove that even people like us can become someone amazing."
Yuno stared in amazement at his friend. There was no wavering in his voice. Asta was pure determination at this moment.
"I'll become the Wizard King,"
Asta declared with a smile on his face. Yuno, inspired by his friend's convictions, echoed the statement.
"Yeah, me too. I'll become the Wizard King too."
All these memories are what drove Yuno to train as hard as he did. Asta gave him the courage to move forward, when he was too scared to even move. No matter how far forward Yuno leapt, Asta stuck right by his side. Suddenly, Yuno was brought out of his thoughts and back to his current predicament with the chain mage. "Asta is no loser," he called.
"Asta is my rival."
Revchi turned snidely to look down upon the boy chosen by the four-leaf. But then, he noticed something was wrong. The magicless boy he had pinned to the ground underfoot began resisting. Asta, through clenched teeth, seized Revchi's foot to push him off. Yuno had finally done for Asta what Asta had always unknowingly done for him. With renewed strength and courage, Asta yelled from the top of his lungs,
"I'm not done yet!"
Startled, Revchi's words left him without meaning. "What the?"
"Sorry for showing you a pathetic side of me, Yuno," Asta continued. "Hold on. I'll kick this guy's butt."
As Asta gathered his strength to launch another offensive against the chain mage, his vision was caught by a glowing black book floating in front of him. Looking to the right, he saw that it had broken through the wall of the Grimoire Tower. The black light intensified, and realization dawned on Asta. "A grimoire?" he whispered in disbelief. The ragged black leather-bound book looked as if it would fall apart at the slightest touch. It was tattered, and the binding was peeling in several places. The cover was so dirty that he couldn't immediately determine how many leaves were on the clover, adorned to the front. "I knew it!" Yuno exclaimed. "Asta not being chosen? There's no way that could happen." As Yuno called his encouragement to his friend, the newly materialized grimoire opened and turned over page down. A midnight black sword thudded into the earth at Asta's feet. The blade was nearly 1.5 meters wide by 2 meters long, with a crosspiece that sat a little lower than the base of the blade. The sword, upon closer inspection, would reveal distorted patterns in the metal, as if it was forged by 1,000 hammers, all with different hammer pins. Revchi was growing concerned now. He had measured the boy's magic potential, and it had turned up nothing. The boy shouldn't be able to use magic of any kind, yet that was the only explanation for the grimoire and the sword. Clover leaves each represent faith, hope, and love. Within the rare fourth leaf dwells good luck. Asta's grimoire settled, its activation having stirred most of the remaining dirt from its surface, revealed a 5-leaf clover. In the 5th leaf, although Asta did not know it at the time, resides the devil. A black aura whipped around Asta as he wielded his new weapon. This aura sent shivers into the depths of Revchi's soul. What the hell is that? His voice was trembling in fear.
You little twerp with no magic powers!
It's heavy, Asta thought to himself. I didn't think my muscles would come in handy like this! Yet blindingly fast diagonal cut through Revchi's chains. His chains seemed to dissipate upon making contact with the sword. He nullified my magic! Revchi screamed in anger and confusion. Because Asta had no magical powers, he was able to obtain the grimoire of anti-magic.
Even with no magic power, I'll become the Wizard King. My magic is never giving up.
Although lacking technique, Asta's follow-through sword stroke caught the would-be thief in the chest and sent him flying backward until he was stopped by the wall with an echoing crash. Delighted with himself and his newfound power, Asta began cheering to himself.
All right! I don't know how, but I got a grimoire. It's worn out and tattered, but I'll treasure it forever.
Asta, completely caught up in the moment, never noticed the 5th leaf between the dirt on its surface. Yuno had composed himself and retrieved his grimoire. Asta, he called, you saved me again. I'll repay you for this someday. Remember our promise? Yuno asked his orphaned brother. Their fists met, symbolizing the pact they had made as children.
I didn't think you remembered,
answered Asta. The sun set over the ancient demon's giant skull as the 2 orphans stood in front of the grimoire tower. Their eyes met as they said in unison, Let's see who becomes the Wizard King!